Let me be honest with you right from the start. 5 years ago, if someone told me they wanted to become a millionaire within a single year, I would have politely nodded while internally rolling my eyes. I would have dismissed it as naive optimism, the kind of thinking that fuels get-rich-quick schemes and late-night infomercials. But here's what changed my perspective entirely. After spending years studying financial markets, behavioral economics, and wealth creation patterns, and then applying those principles to build multiple income streams that crossed into 7 figures, I discovered something that completely contradicted everything I thought I knew. The path to building substantial wealth isn't what conventional wisdom suggests. It's not about working harder at your job. It's not about extreme frugality. And it definitely isn't about waiting decades for compound interest to work its magic. Today, I'm going to share with you the exact blueprint I would follow if I were starting from absolute zero in 2026 with the goal of reaching millionaire status as quickly as possible. This isn't theory. This is based on research, real-world application, and the hard-earned lessons from both my successes and my spectacular failures. By the end of this speech, you'll understand 3 critical things: why the traditional advice about wealth building is fundamentally flawed for anyone who wants to accelerate their timeline, what the research actually tells us about rapid wealth accumulation, and the specific framework I would use starting tomorrow if every dollar I had disappeared overnight. Let's address the elephant in the room. The most popular financial advice you'll hear goes something like this: live below your means, max out your retirement accounts, invest consistently in index funds, and wait patiently for 30 to 40 years. And you know what? That advice isn't wrong. It's just painfully slow. Let me give you some numbers that illustrate this point. If you invested $850 per month into a diversified portfolio that returned an average of 9% annually, which is slightly above the historical market average, you would indeed become a millionaire. The catch? It would take approximately 28 years. If you could somehow scrape together $1,500 per month, you could cut that timeline down to about 21 years, still waiting over 2 decades. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. Research from financial planning studies shows that the median American household saves roughly 8% of their income. For someone earning $65,000 annually, that's about $5,200 per year, or $433 per month. At that rate, even with optimistic market returns, reaching millionaire status would take nearly 4 decades. But here's what those calculations miss entirely. They assume your income stays relatively flat, adjusted only for inflation. They assume you'll maintain discipline through market crashes, personal emergencies, and life changes. They assume you won't touch that money when your car breaks down, when medical bills arrive, or when your kid needs braces. Most importantly, they assume you're willing to sacrifice your prime earning years for a comfortable retirement that may or may not come. I'm not saying passive investing is bad. In fact, it's essential, and I'll come back to this. But if your goal is to become a millionaire in 2026 or within the next few years, passive investing alone won't get you there. You need a fundamentally different approach. Here's a truth that the personal finance industry doesn't want to acknowledge loudly. For the vast majority of people, saving your way to $1 million is mathematically impossible within any reasonable time frame. Let's run through the brutal mathematics. The median household income in North America hovers around $74,000. After taxes, that's roughly $56,000, or about $4,750 per month. Now, even if you're incredibly disciplined and manage to save 25% of your after-tax income, which would be extraordinary, you're setting aside $1,162 per month, or approximately $14,000 per year. At that rate, without any investment returns whatsoever, it would take you 71 years to save $1 million. Even if you achieved a respectable 7% annual return on your savings, you're still looking at about 26 years. And remember, this assumes you're saving 25% of your income, which means living on $3,188 per month to cover rent, utilities, food, transportation, insurance, healthcare, and everything else life throws at you. The fundamental problem is that cutting expenses has a floor. You can't reduce your rent below zero. You can't stop eating. You can't eliminate transportation costs unless you work from home and never leave your house. There's a minimum cost to existing in modern society, and once you hit that floor, you can't cut any further. This is why every study on millionaires reveals the same pattern. They didn't save their way to wealth. They earned their way there. According to research examining wealth accumulation patterns, approximately 88% of millionaires are self-made, meaning they didn't inherit their wealth. And among those self-made millionaires, the overwhelming majority built their wealth through business ownership or strategic career moves that dramatically increased their income, not through aggressive saving. There's a deceptively simple formula that governs wealth creation: net worth, income, expenses, plus investment returns. Most people focus obsessively on the expenses part of this equation. They clip coupons, they hunt for deals, they debate whether the generic brand is really as good as the name brand. Meanwhile, millionaires focus on the income part. Why? Because income is theoretically unlimited, while expense reduction has a hard ceiling. Think about it this way. If you earn $75,000 per year and you're extraordinarily frugal, maybe you can reduce your expenses to $40,000. You've saved $35,000, which is impressive. But what if instead of spending all that energy cutting costs, you focused that same energy on increasing your income by 50%? Now you're earning $112,500. Even if your expenses increased slightly to $50,000 because you're investing in yourself, in help, and in your business, you're now saving $62,500 per year. That's nearly double the savings with less stress and deprivation. Research in behavioral economics supports this. Studies have shown that people who focus primarily on income generation rather than expense minimization report higher life satisfaction, less financial stress, and paradoxically often end up with higher savings rates because their income growth outpaces their lifestyle inflation. This is the fundamental mindset shift that separates people who become wealthy quickly from those who spend decades slowly accumulating modest wealth. Millionaires don't ask, "How can I afford this?" They ask, "How can I earn more so this becomes easily affordable?" Now you might be thinking, okay, I'll focus on income. I'll work harder, get promoted, maybe switch jobs for a raise. That's certainly better than pure cost cutting, but it still won't get you to millionaire status quickly. Here's why. Labor leverage means building a team that multiplies your output. Instead of serving 5 clients personally, you build systems and hire people who can serve 50 clients. Your role shifts from doing the work to designing the systems and ensuring quality. Capital leverage means using invested money to generate returns. This could be through real estate, business investments, or financial markets. The key is that your money works while you sleep. Code leverage means creating digital products or automated systems that can serve unlimited customers without requiring additional time from you. Think software, online courses, templates, digital tools, memberships. Media leverage means building an audience through content creation. Whether it's social media, a blog, a podcast, or video content, media leverage allows you to reach thousands or millions of people with the same effort it would take to reach one person face-to-face. Research from entrepreneurship studies consistently shows that businesses utilizing at least two forms of leverage grow their revenue 3 to 5 times faster than businesses relying solely on the owner's personal labor. If I were starting from zero in 2026, my entire strategy would be built around stacking these forms of leverage as quickly as possible. All right, let's get specific. If I woke up tomorrow with my bank account at zero, my network intact, and my knowledge preserved, here's exactly what I would do. Phase 1. Generate cash flow immediately. Months 1 to 3. First, I need capital to invest in growth. I would start with high-value service delivery, something I can do well that businesses or individuals will pay premium prices for. This could be consulting, coaching, specialized freelance work, anything where I can charge $2,000 to $10,000 per project or client. The goal in this phase isn't to build a sustainable business model. The goal is to generate $15,000 to $30,000 in the bank as quickly as possible. This becomes my runway for the next phase. Why this approach? Research on startup success rates shows that businesses with even modest initial capital are 2.7 times more likely to survive their first 2 years compared to businesses starting with no capital. Phase 2. Build leverage systems. Months 3 to 8. Once I have cash flow, I immediately begin building leverage. I would start documenting every process, every client interaction, every delivery method. Then I would hire, starting with a virtual assistant for $800 to $1,200 per month to handle administrative work, then adding specialized contractors as revenue allows. Simultaneously, I would begin building a digital product, something I can sell repeatedly without recreating it each time. This could be a specialized template, a workshop, a membership community, or a course. The product would solve a specific painful problem for a defined audience willing to pay $200 to $2,000 for the solution. I would also commit to creating content consistently, likely focusing on 1 or 2 platforms where my target audience already spends time. This isn't about going viral. It's about building a small, engaged audience of people who trust my expertise and will eventually become customers. Studies on digital product businesses show that once you have a product generating $3,000 per month in semi-passive revenue, scaling to $15,000 per month typically takes 6 to 12 months with focused effort. Phase 3. Scale through multiplication, months 8 to 18. Now, the real acceleration begins. With systems in place, a small team handling delivery, and digital products generating baseline revenue, I would focus entirely on multiplication. More clients through the agency or service arm, more customers buying the digital products, more content reaching more people, more strategic partnerships that provide access to new audiences. I would also invest heavily in paid advertising at this stage, because when you have a proven offer and solid unit economics, meaning you know that for every dollar you spend on advertising, you reliably get back $2 or $3 in revenue, then it becomes a pure math game. If you can turn $100 into $250, you do it as many times as your cash flow allows. Research on growth stage businesses indicates that companies which achieve product market fit and then invest 20% to 30% of revenue into customer acquisition typically see 3x to 5x revenue growth annually. Phase 4. Diversify and secure, months 18 plus. Once the business is generating strong cash flow, $30,000 to $80,000 per month, I would begin aggressive diversification. A significant portion of profits would go into index funds and ETFs, creating a foundation of passive growth. Another portion might go into real estate, either through rental properties or REITs, depending on my appetite for active management. The goal is to ensure that even if the business faces challenges, my wealth continues to grow through diversified assets. This is where the traditional investment advice finally becomes relevant, not as the primary wealth-building strategy, but as the wealth preservation and multiplication strategy. Studies tracking millionaires consistently show that they typically have 4 to 7 different income streams, combining active business income with various forms of passive investment income. If you value stability above all else, if you prefer predictable income even if it's modest, if you don't want to deal with the stress of building something from scratch, then the traditional path might actually be better for you. There's no shame in that. A secure job, consistent investing, and a comfortable retirement in 3 decades is a perfectly valid life choice. But if you're someone who feels constrained by traditional structures, if you have more ambition than your current situation can contain, if you're willing to trade short-term comfort for long-term freedom, then this framework can transform your financial reality. Research on entrepreneurship consistently shows that about 20% of new businesses fail within the first year, and only about 50% survive to year 5. But here's what those statistics don't capture. Entrepreneurs who fail once and start again have dramatically higher success rates the second time around. Failure isn't the end, it's education, as long as you're willing to learn from it. So where do you go from here? Here's what I recommend. First, audit your current situation honestly. Calculate your net worth, your income, your expenses, and your current trajectory. If you maintain your existing path, where will you be financially in 1 year? In 5 years? In 10 years? Are you satisfied with that trajectory? Second, identify your leverage opportunities. What skills do you have that businesses or individuals would pay premium prices for? What knowledge could you package into a digital product? What audience could you build through consistent content? Where can you create systems that multiply your output? Third, take one concrete action this week. Not next month, not when you feel ready, this week. Start a conversation with a potential client, outline your digital product idea, create your first piece of content, document a process that could be delegated. Momentum creates momentum. Fourth, commit to continuous learning. Read books on business building, study successful entrepreneurs in your field, consume content from people who have achieved what you want to achieve. Your education didn't end when you left school. In fact, it's just beginning. Here's something I want to share with you. When I was first building my wealth, I felt incredibly alone. I didn't have mentors who had walked this path. I didn't have a community of people pursuing similar goals. I made expensive mistakes that could have been avoided if I'd had guidance. That's why I'm building something different. I'm creating resources, strategies, and frameworks to help people like you accelerate your path to financial freedom. This speech is just the beginning. If you found value in what I've shared today, I want to invite you to subscribe and join this community. I'm Mike, and I'll be sharing the detailed playbooks, the tactical strategies, the real numbers, and the honest lessons from this journey. Not just theory, but the actual implementation details that make the difference between dreaming about wealth and building it. The path to becoming a millionaire in 2026 is absolutely possible, but it requires the right information, the right mindset, and the right support system. Let's build this together. Subscribe now, and let's make 2026 the year everything changes for you.